Welcome to meeting number 4 of the Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format and members are attending. Yes, Mr. Kellaway.
Sorry to interrupt. I want to making sure my hand is up, just up to be on the speaking order, if that's possible. I'm not sure.
I have your hand up, Mr. Kellaway, and I have Mr. Albus's hand up as well.
Okay, thank you.
Point of order.
Attending in person, let me just get through this, guys.
Okay.
Attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Pursuant to Standing Order 1064, the committee is meeting to consider the request by members of the committee to undertake a study of the BC Ferries procurement. The request was distributed by the duty clerk on Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025, excuse me. Before we continue, I'd like to ask all in-person participants to consult the guidelines written on the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including, of course, our interpreters. You will also notice a QR code on the card which links to a short awareness video. I'd like to take a moment to remind all members of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function, which we've already done, apparently. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. I have a point of order from Mr. Lawrence before I go to those with their hands up. Mr. Lawrence.
Just a quick clarification there, point of order. Mr. Albus, the Zoom does recognize left to right, and Mr. Albus is first there, just for the point of order.
What's that?
Yeah, I was going to put my hand up. Yeah.
So I had, I'll go to you. Well, I had Mr. Kellaway first with his hand up.
He did put his hand down.
Zoom recognizes left to right there. So Mr. Albus was first, and so by rule, you have to recognize him first.
Okay. It was the other way first.
He put his hand down.
So how did that switch over? I don't know.
I didn't put my hand down.
Yes,
I didn't touch
did.
a thing. Yeah. Well, to be frank, I didn't touch a bloody thing on my computer.
I'm in first here, so I would ask the floor, please.
Just to note, though, in all honesty, I didn't touch anything on this computer.
Mr. Chair?
Would it go to somebody who's speaking?
Okay, motion for the consideration of the committee today that pursuant to Standing Order 108.
Hold on a second, Mr. Albus. I'm just conferring with the clerk. And I'm just trying to figure out why Mike Callaway was in the top left, you were in the top right, both with your hands up, and then it switched over. That's all I'm asking.
Now someone switched off mine here, so I would just like to be able to continue, sir, because we did request, Conservatives and the Bloc did request today's meeting, so I think it's incumbent upon the chair to allow us to go first.
I mean, I can. I also want to do right by Mr. Kellaway.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kellaway, you had your hand up first. Do you want to cede the floor to Mr. Albus?
Well, I had it up first, so I was planning to go first.
But I had the floor here, so it's Mr. Chair.
Okay,
I
so
think you have to rule on this.
Mr. Albus, I'm not trying to play games. He was first on the left. You were on the right. Both had your hands up. From my interpretation,
he had his hand up, Mr. Chair. He had his hand up before it began. Mine was clearly up when you began the meeting. So he actually pulled his hand down. I've been patient here. It was Conservatives that asked for this hearing along with the Bloc. I think it's incumbent upon the committee to start with those that requested the meeting and then give us and allow the committee to decide its business. So if you'd like, I'd like to start that pursuant to Standing Order 108.
Mr. Kellaway, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
No, and with respect to Mr. Albus and everyone there, I didn't put my hand down. I don't know if there's a timeout function on this particular piece of software or there's a glitch in the system, but I did not put my hand down. I didn't touch the computer, so it wasn't performed by me. So I can only say that I didn't touch a bloody thing. My hand was up first, and then you can make your decisions accordingly.
Yeah. So the clerk, I asked the clerk to give me a list of who had their hands up. He had looked at me and said, Mr. Kellaway has his hand up. I said, I know. And then he said, Mr. Albus has his hand up. I said, I know. And he started a list, which is why when it switched over, I said, well, how did this switch over? He goes, I don't know, but he has
Mr. Chair,
the list.
I did start
Point of order.
So I took this out of my own right? And so I'm going to recognize
Point of
Mr.
order.
Kellaway because
Point of
clerk
order.
is the
Point of
one
order.
who took, I'll turn it over to you for a point of order, but I'm going to recognize Mr. Kellaway because it was the clerk who took the list of those that were
Decided
speaking.
that, I would appreciate you hearing interventions from Dr. Lewis and myself.
So I'm going to allow Mr. Kellaway to speak, and then I'm going to turn it over to you.
I would challenge the chair. Challenge
Yeah,
that
we
decision.
challenge
You
the
can do
chair.
that. But I want you to know, colleagues, with everything going on, I basically asked the clerk to be the one to take note of who was the first to have their hands up.
Mr. Chair, there's no
In case I was
debate.
reading my notes.
There's no debate on this motion.
The clerk, I just want you to know, the clerk did that, and therefore, I'm just putting it out there for everyone. So challenge the chair. This is something that cannot be debated. So
Recorded vote.
we'll go to a vote, and we'll go to a recorded vote.
Mr. Graves? Mr. Graves?
Yes, I vote yay with the chair. Thank you.
Mr. Calloway?
Yes.
Mr. Watron?
I vote yes.
Ms. Nguyen?
I vote yes.
Mr. Albers?
Nay.
Mr. Lawrence?
Nay.
Ms. Lewis? No. Mr. Mules?
Nay.
Monsieur Barcelou-Duval?
No.
Nays 5, yeas 4.
Okay, so based on what they're saying. Okay, Mr. Albus, I've switched the order. It's now you first, then Mr. Kellaway, and then Mr. Lawrence, if Mr. Lawrence still wants to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and
Okay.
thank you, committee members. That pursuant to Standing Order 108, the committee urgently undertake a study of the Canada Infrastructure Bank decision to provide $1 billion in low-interest financing to BC Ferries for the purchase of new vessels from a Chinese state-owned shipyard. The committee hold one meeting to receive testimony from the following witnesses for an hour each, separately, and that this meeting be convened as efficiently as possible within 30 days following the adoption of this motion. 1, the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure. 2, the Minister of Transport and Internal Trade. 3, the CEO of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. 4, the CEO of BC Ferries. And immediately following the conclusion of witness testimony at the meeting, the chair be instructed to recognize a member from an opposition party for the purposes of considering a motion containing recommendations related to the study, and not more than 1 hour be provided for debate on the motion, and that every question necessary to dispose of the motion be put before the meeting can be adjourned. And en français, que conformément à l'article
that pursuant to Standing Order 108, the committee undertake, as urgently as possible, a study regarding the Canada Infrastructure Bank's decision to provide $1 billion in low-interest financing for the purchase of new vessels by a Chinese state-owned shipyard, that there be a meeting held for 1 hour each separately to hear the following 4 witnesses, and that all of these meetings be organized as efficiently as possible in the 30 days following the adoption of this motion. Witness number 1, the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, 2, the Minister of Transportation and Internal Trade, 3, the CEO of the Canada Infrastructure Bank, and 4, the CEO of BC Ferries. And immediately following the end of witness testimonies, the chair will give the floor to a member of an opposition party in order to look into a motion regarding this study, and that a maximum of 1 hour be given to the debate of that motion, and that all questions necessary to dispose of that motion be voted upon before the adjournment of that sitting.
This motion to the clerk in both official languages for circulation, and I'm prepared now, if you see it in order, to start the debate on said motion. I do have my thoughts. Just let me know if I have the floor to continue at this time, or if you want to give it a moment to send it to all members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. I have confirmed we have received it. He is going to circulate it. I see Mr. Kellaway's hand up. Is that because you haven't received it, Mr. Kellaway?
No, I was just going to ask, and my hand is up, as it was last time. But we're looking to obviously have it circulated, which you just said it is, but we'd like to have just a few moments to take a look at it if that would be okay with everyone there.
How long do you think that'll take, Mr. Clerk? So I'm going to suspend for about 5 minutes just to make sure everybody gets a copy of it, and then we can review it. And then, Mr. Albus, the floor will be yours to speak to the motion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That works for everyone? Okay, this meeting is suspended. I call this meeting back to order. I will turn the floor over to Mr. Albus first, and then I had Mr. Barcelou-Duval on the list, followed by Mr. Kellaway, and then Dr. Lewis. So, Mr. Albus, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate that this is not an easy time for any of us, but as I said at our first meeting, this is an issue that I think the Transport Committee needs to be seized with. Essentially, we have found a continuing story of where we find new insights as to what the government is doing, and it's not good. Originally, when I pressed the Minister of Transport on this in the House of Commons, she actually said that she wrote a letter outlining her concerns that the BC Ferries, which is owned by the good people of British Columbia, was purchasing ships. And I won't go through the whole June 16th, 2025 letter. Remember, this was only about 3 weeks ago. But I'm just read the first paragraph and the last. It is with great consternation and disappointed that I learned of BC Ferry's recent announcement that it has selected China Merchants Industry Weihai shipyards to build 4 new major vessels. And the last paragraph, I am dismayed that BC Ferries would select a Chinese state-owned shipyard to build new ferries in the current geopolitical context, and I ask that you verify and confirm with utmost certainty that no federal funding will be diverted to support the acquisition of these new ferries. And yet, we find out through the media that the hapless new Minister of Housing and Infrastructure knew nothing of a $1 billion loan agreement that had been signed by the Canada Infrastructure Bank, essentially financing with taxpayer dollars the outsourcing of Canadian jobs to the shipyard in China. Imagine my shock, Mr. Chair, that we learned that during a time of unjustified steel and aluminum tariffs, where people are receiving pink slips for their jobs because of these American tariffs, that we find that they find that their own government is actually using their tax dollars to subsidize jobs and economic activity outside the country. And so I think that it's completely on us as a committee to demand answers from both the Minister of Transport and Internal Trade and the Minister of Housing and Communities, because they do not appear to be on the same page. And anytime we're talking about scarce public taxpayer dollars, effectively incentivizing other corporations to do the same, Mr. Chair, to seek financing for a project, I don't understand how this is even within the Canadian Infrastructure Bank's mandate. And that's why the CEO of the Infrastructure Bank itself has been called in our motion specifically. Now, obviously, BC Ferries, there's a lot of questions. I've spoken to many reporters in British Columbia who have a number of different questions outlining the procurement and some of the details that come with this. But again, my focus is largely on getting answers so that people can know whether or not their government, remember the government that said elbows up, Canada strong, we can build it together, is in fact actually financing the outsourcing of Canadian jobs. And it doesn't seem that anyone up until the Conservatives, and I also should thank my colleague from the Bloc for supporting this emergency meeting today so that we can bring this important issue forward. Mr. Chair, last thing I'll just simply say, Conservatives are demanding answers for concerned Canadians many who are facing job losses in their communities over unjustified steel and aluminum tariffs, and yet they read in their newspapers that their own governments, both provincial and federal, and particularly as a federal member of parliament, I find it outrageous that the Crown Corporation, known as the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, is actively financing the outsourcing of Canadian jobs. This is wrong. We need to have some answers to the government's true position on this, because we have conflicting reports that have played out over the media, and I really do hope that this committee can get behind this particular motion and that we can have those ministers and CEOs of these corporations and from the Canadian cabinet come and actually answer our questions, as uncomfortable as they may be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. Mr. Kellaway.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the time. Just on the motion here, a couple of things come to mind. I don't believe that we should conclude a study or make recommendation without careful consideration to any study. So from my point of view, any report should have expert analysis done by the committee's analyst, and we shouldn't guillotine or presuppose the witness testimony by making recommendations right after. We should hear from the witnesses first, so we shouldn't basically presuppose the outcomes of the study. For example, a member is more than welcome to make a motion, undertake a report, but that should be done by analysts following witness testimonies. So from our prerogative, we would, look to strike that last paragraph of the Conservative motion. And I put that up there for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kellaway. So you're putting forward an amendment to scrap the last paragraph.
Yeah, but I understand that Xavier also has time as well, so I don't want to jump the line there.
If you're putting forward an amendment, though, the discussion then becomes about the amendment.
Well, then I would put forward the amendment then.
Okay. Did everybody understand what Mr. Kellaway just put forward as an amendment?
Basically scrapping the last paragraph.
Okay. What would the last, so starting with and immediately following the conclusion? Is that correct? Okay. Do members all understand the amendment put forward by Mr. Kellaway? Excuse me. So we'll begin discussion. I'll create a new list on the amendment.
Yeah.
I have Mr. Barcelou-Duval followed by Mr. Albus.
OK, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you given me the floor? Okay, perfect. It wasn't clear. So, regarding Mr. Kellaway's amendment, to a certain extent, I share Mr. Kellaway's concerns that he raised, and that is why I myself, I prepared another amendment, which could also allow the committee to look into what we wish to do, what we would like to do with the witnesses who we will hear from here in committee when we will hold those meetings. I think it's important for us to hear from those individuals at the committee. I think it's important for them to come and speak to us. The Canada Infrastructure Bank, which allocated the $1 billion. Also, the question of BC Ferries. They're the ones who made the decision to give the contract to a Chinese shipyard, and the two ministers involved. I would much like to know how they will defend this decision to give $1 billion in public funds, which will end up directly in a Chinese state-owned shipyard's pockets. I think that supporting, or rather, I find this a surprising decision, and it's not the first time we've heard about this file. This was the business's decision, and even if we might find it unfortunate or questionable, it's the British Columbia company who made this decision, and that was not the federal government's decision. However, the federal government did decide to give quite a handful $1 billion to that company. So it is important to me for us to hear all of those witnesses, for us to hear explanations of these decisions. Also, in Quebec, there are important ferry matters, especially in the Magdalen Islands, where they are looking for a ferry to complete the work that is currently carried out by the Magdalen 2, because the Magdalen 2 needs to undergo repairs, and the federal government has proposed $6 billion over a number of years. But the Magdalen Islands Ferry has had to wait for a number of years now because the federal government has absolutely not allocated sufficient funding for this important matter to residents of the Magdalen Islands. It's very serious if there is no longer a ferry. The residents of this island will no longer be able to go there, and neither will goods, etc. It seems very easy for Ottawa to write out checks, and I'm pleased to hear that our neighbors in British Columbia can have this funding for their ferries. But I would really like to see the federal government be as enthusiastic in financing Quebec's needs as those of BC. Thank you very much, Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Mr. Albus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what I'd like to just point out about Mr. Callaway's amendment is effectively he wants to push any timely recommendations as far back as possible to give the government as much clearance as possible so that they can either let the story die over the summer. And, you know, as responsible parliamentarians, if we expect to have a government, a minority government, I'll just remind everyone, that will listen to Canadians and listen to their representatives, it's important for us to be able to immediately make recommendations that the government will see and hear, and to have those recommendations, if we find through the process there's important public policies such as not financing with federal tax dollars through the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, you know, steel, aluminum, and shipbuilding jobs in another country, particularly China. So this is an area that Chrystia Freeland, the Minister of Transport, has been very public about, that she has huge concerns. So therefore, I think that we need to be able to push those in power positions of leadership, that they immediately act on something. I do not need an analyst, with all due respect, analysts do very good work, but I do not need to have an analyst give me a data-driven response for something that I know is wrong. Outsourcing Canadian jobs is always wrong, and it's even worse when we have these unjustified steel and aluminum tariffs. I hope Liberals will understand that. I hope that they will not support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. I'll go back to Mr. Kellaway.
Yeah, just a couple of key points on what's been said here. For me, the amendment is put forward because it's the responsible thing to do in terms of the analysis of the witness testimony, and not presuppose those recommendations. It's not who's more Canadian or who's more focused. We all want to work. We want to see work completed by Canadians. We want work done by Canadians, but we also don't want to presuppose anything that may be not beneficial to the country writ large, or this example. So that's just, I wanted to put that in there. It is from a process perspective in terms of getting the best recommendations, going through the right process to get them, and to doing this strategically. It's not to avoid anything. It's not to remove anything. There is no grand conspiracy here. We want to get to the heart of the matter, but we want to do it the right way and the right process. And I think that's that's what all parliamentarians share. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kellaway. I have nobody left in the speakers list for the amendment proposed by Mr. Kellaway, and therefore we will go to a vote. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Clerk.
Recorded vote, please.
Yes, recorded vote.
Mr. Greaves.
I vote yes.
Mr. Kellaway.
Yes.
Mr. Watron.
Je vote oui.
Ms. Nguyen.
I vote yes.
Mr. Albus.
No.
Mr. Lawrence,
No.
Miss Lewis,
No.
Mr. Muse,
No.
Monsieur Barcelou Duval,
Non.
yeas 4, nays 5.
The amendment doesn't carry, which now brings us back to the discussion on the motion put forward by Mr. Albus. And next on the list, I had Monsieur Barcelou Duval, suivi par Dr. Lewis. Monsieur Barcelou Duval.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it is now my turn to propose an amendment to the motion by my Conservative colleague. So I would propose to replace the last paragraph by this. So immediately following the conclusion of witness testimony, there be 1 hour allotted to decide where the study should proceed after this before that meeting is adjourned. Could I have some time to explain my amendment? Yes, certainly. So essentially, here's what my amendment would do. Before, we had a motion that indirectly talked about the report of that study, but my motion would allow us to discuss the conclusions of our study, which we will not presume. We also won't presume the recommendations or presume that there will be a report to the House. The original motion also presupposes that the study would be completed after that meeting in question, but this amendment would allow us to leave the door open to continue the study if necessary, whether that be in the fall or at another time. It allows the committee to decide exactly what we would like to do with the witness testimony that we will have heard. And it is also faithful to the essence of the Conservative motion. Thank you very much.
Dr. Lewis.
Thank you. The Liberal Infrastructure Bank gave out their largest investment to date, $1 billion of taxpayer-funded loans, not for building Canadian ships to power our Canadian economy, but to build up the Chinese economy, Chinese workers, and to power their own economy. There are a number of questions that come to mind for Canadians. Firstly, Canadians want to know, why has taxpayer-funded Liberal Bank not ensure that its loans are not being used to fund industries in foreign nations? The question also arises, how did the Minister of Infrastructure and this Liberal government allow this to happen? This is not what Canadians expect when the Liberal government said that the bank would catalyze investments and that they would leverage private sector dollars. The Trudeau, now Carney-backed Canada Infrastructure Bank, is funded with $35 billion of taxpayer money, and it's being used, those taxpayer funds are being used to ship jobs essentially overseas and selling out the Canadian shipbuilding industry, all at the expense of Canadian workers. What this motion is about is a very serious matter to Canadians and to our Canadian economy. The Liberal government and the Infrastructure Bank are actually complicit in offshoring Canadian jobs, and this is a very serious issue. This is especially outrageous at a time when our steel workers and industry are under attack from unjustified U.S. tariffs. The CIB is complicit in undermining Canadian competitiveness, and they must be held to account for how they have allowed this to happen. There is actually no excuse that the Minister of Transportation, who has been in cabinet for at least 10 years, omitted the fact that this $1 billion financing is from the Canada Infrastructure Bank. Her strongly worded letter to her provincial counterpart actually made it sound as if her government had nothing to do with financing the Chinese ships. How could this government feign outrage at the investment, yet not know that they were bankrolling it at a subsidized rate, sending Canadian jobs abroad? How many Canadians get a loan from the government at a 1.8 interest rate? Canadians would love this treatment for their governments that we are handing out to foreign nations. This $1 billion funding to China is liberal incompetence at best and deliberately misleading to Canadians at worst. This is exactly why Canadians have long opposed the Liberal failed infrastructure bank. Where is the transparency? And why are they funding projects that are taking jobs from Canadians and giving them to countries with much lower labor standards, much lower environmental standards, and much lower ethical standards? The bank has also struggled to attract private sector investment, barely 1-to-1, even though they promised a 6-to-1 ratio. The bank has not only failed to attract any private sector investments, they have gained taxpayer dollars and have channeled it away from Canadians to a Chinese state-funded shipyard. The Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities several years ago also determined that this infrastructure bank was not fixable. And so they made only one recommendation in their report, and that was to abolish the bank. Once again, we see why Canadians, and conservatives and opposition members were correct in the assessment to abolish the bank. This is yet another example of why conservatives do not have any confidence in this bank. The bank's decisions are suspect and were made behind closed doors, the ramifications of which is such that the decisions came at a pivotal time to Canada and struck a very hard blow to the Canadian employment sector and Canadian workers. The CEO and the Minister of Infrastructure must answer for this. Liberal ministers have often denied having responsibility for the bank's investment or spending, saying it is arm's length. But that is no excuse when the stakes are so high. Canadians need answers to how their hard-earned tax dollars are being spent. The CIB characterized this investment as supporting essential, quote-unquote, service upgrades and, quote, green infrastructure. But it does not reflect the original promise of public-private partnership, a model that
Mr.
was
Chair,
supposed
point of order. The
I have a
member
point
doesn't
of
seem to
order
be
by Mr.
speaking to the
Greaves.
amendment that's been tabled. We're jumping ahead and seemingly speaking to the substance of the agreement that's been struck in British Columbia. Could we perhaps focus on the amendment as tabled?
Thank you, Mr. Greaves. I'll just ask the member to make link or reference to the amendment that was proposed by Mr. Barcelou Duval in the remainder of her remarks.
The amendment is to have additional time for the hour, and I'm substantiating why Mr. Barcelou Duval's amendment is in line and why we will need that extra time. So this is what I'm speaking to. Thank you. The CIB characterized the investment as supporting essential service upgrades, but it does not reflect the original promise of public-private partnership model where private investors share financial risk. This is a taxpayer subsidized loan to another nation. Neither do we have any evidence to suggest that the building these ferries in China, which largely fuels its economy with coal, will provide any net benefit to the environment. In fact, the additional hour which Mr. Barsom Duval spoke of is important because the investment will likely cancel out any emissions reductions they hope to achieve because of how poor the environmental standards are in China. Lastly, the CIB just celebrated their 100th investment to build a strong, more resilient Canada. This celebration came out the same week that they announced this $1 billion deal with BC Ferries to purchase new Chinese Communist state-made vessels. The question remains, what other investments are being touted as Canadian investments when they are actually being outsourced to foreign nations and not benefiting the Canadian economy and the Canadian job market? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. Next, I'll go to Mr. Greaves, followed by Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me say that I support this committee undertaking a study into this decision and into the shipbuilding agreement that's been struck by BC Ferries. But I think it is disappointing to see our colleagues opposite making very familiar political points, using as a whipping post what is, in fact, a critical piece of infrastructure in our province of British Columbia. And while perhaps some of the colleagues, particularly those I note from the province of Ontario, may be less familiar with the critical role that BC Ferries plays in supporting BC's coastal communities, this is a service that is very unfortunately being played politics with currently and being made to feel the brunt of long-standing concerns, long-standing talking points that our Conservative colleagues have made before. In this instance, they're also seemingly prejudging what the outcome of the witness testimony that we look forward to hearing in our next meeting will be. And so it really is premature, Mr. Chair, for many of the conclusions that the members opposite are drawing to be raising in this fashion, rather than in good faith waiting for the expert testimony, the leadership of BC Ferries, the ministers in question, to actually have an opportunity to speak to this committee and speak to the concerns that have been raised, and to explain very clearly for us why it is that Canadian shipyards currently are at capacity based on the national shipbuilding strategy, that they were unable to offer cost-competitive bids to provide these ferries. And I look forward to my Conservative colleagues defending why they think it is that the electrification of British Columbia's ferry fleet and that the expansion of this vital service for coastal communities is something that the Conservatives are seemingly endorsing, spending billions of dollars more and waiting decades longer to actually receive those replacement ferries. So we need to hear this witness testimony, Mr. Chair, and we need to have the opportunity to reflect on the questions that have been raised. But I encourage my colleagues to stop using BC Ferries and BC coastal communities as a punching bag to make points that we have heard before and which, frankly, do not serve Canadians or the public taxpayer properly in this instance. Let's let the evidence be raised. Let's let the witnesses speak, and then let's pass our conclusions about how to proceed and what the federal government can or should perhaps do in future situations of this kind. So we support this study, Mr. Chair, but please let's have a little bit less foghorning from the members opposite. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greaves. Next, we'll go to Mr. Lawrence.
Merci. J'ai trouvé très, très bizarre.
Thank you. I found it very, very strange that given the current geopolitical climate, that the federal Liberals allocated $1 billion in loans to the government of British Columbia, or rather to a British Columbian company, when they could have used a Quebec shipyard.
I have no speakers left, so I'll turn it over to the clerk to go to a recorded vote on the amendment put forward by Monsieur Barcelou-Duval. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Greaves?
I vote yes.
Mr. Kellaway?
Oui.
Mr. Watchern?
Oui.
Ms. Nguyen?
I vote yes.
Mr. Albis?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Oui.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Muse?
Yes.
Monsieur Barcelou-Duval?
Oui.
Yes, 10 et 9.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. So the amendment carries, and now we will go back to the motion as amended by Mr. Basalou-Duval. I have Mr. Albus's hand up. Mr. Albus, the floor is once again yours.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Part of the motion charges you as the committee chair to find the most efficient way of bringing in these ministers and these CEOs as possible. But again, it does give some specificity that we expect ministers to appear separately for 1 hour because we want to focus in specific questions to each one so we can consider their responses. And I wish you the best in that, Mr. Chair. If the Liberal members who have spoken saying that they also want answers, I'm sure that they would support my call to you to try to make this happen as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. I see no other members who wish to speak. Oh, Mr. Basalou-Duval, vous avez la main.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would seize this opportunity because I presume that we will get around to voting on the motion, but I would like to make another comment. It seems surprising to see that the federal government gives $1 billion to fund a project that will be carried out in China with public funds from here. While at the same time, the same federal government, we saw its ministers go far and wide around the country to talk about how Canadian steel will be used and how these major infrastructure projects will be done using Canadian resources. I have thousands of steel workers in my riding who would have been very pleased to benefit from Canadian public funds rather than those funds being sent abroad to China. I think it's important for us together to reflect on this matter as elected members and to how sensitive this topic is, because there are Canadians who are concerned about what their future holds and they need their government to act responsibly. Thank you.
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank my colleague from the bloc for making that reference. I actually was on at C-SPAN the other day talking about their capabilities and capacity. And one of the things they did mention to me is that they use Algoma steel as much as possible. So when we talk about shipbuilding here in Canada, I just want to reiterate that there is a supply chain and that gets used. And these are really real consequences. So I do hope that all members can vote in favor of this motion and that we can get those ministers in as soon as possible because I'd like to hear from them on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. Seeing no other members that wish to speak, we'll go to a vote on the motion as amended. And I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Greaves?
I vote yes.
Mr. Calloway?
I vote yes.
Mr. Watcher?
Je vote oui.
Ms. Nguyen?
I vote yes.
Mr. Albus?
Absolument, oui.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis? Yes. Mr. Muse?
Yes.
Monsieur Basalou-Duval?
Oui.
Yes, 9.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. So the motion, as amended carries. Thank you very much, colleagues. With no other business, and before I adjourn, I just wanted to give a shout out to Austin and Logan, 2 interns that are here on the Hill that are joining us for this meeting and learning a little more about our democracy. It's always great to have the next generation here to learn how it all works. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great summer, everyone. We'll see you in the next 30 days.